Good morning. This is Catherine Clement in Boulder, Colorado. This is the Saturday Morning Mastermind, and we're studying the book, The Five Love Languages. Actually, it's the singles edition, but it pertains to all areas of life. So don't be thrown off if you're not single. It's still a great book to read. And today, the chapter is about family relationships, like with your parents and your siblings, things like that. And it should be an interesting discussion here. So I will let the other panelists introduce themselves before we get started.
I'll jump out. Dan Sisek in Las Vegas, Nevada, where it is overcast. And the other night we actually got rain overnight. So we're enjoying the cool down here a little bit. Even I'm enjoying the cool down a little bit. And just looking forward to what we have to discuss today. And glad to be here.
And I'm Bill Maybauer out of Olympia, Washington. I'm going to be listening in, and yes, we had a rainy day yesterday and it is cooling down, but otherwise enjoying, and we'll be listening. Thanks. Have a great day.
Glad you're here with us, Bill. Thanks for joining in. So this is chapter 9 on the Kindle version. I'm not sure if it's different on the hard copy or not, but I think this is a great chapter because I think a lot of people's hang-ups start with maybe dysfunctional parental relationships, dysfunctional sibling relationships. And one of the points that this chapter makes really strongly is that it's never too late. Like they say, as long as everybody's still alive, relationships can be repaired. I say, even if somebody's dead, relationships can be repaired because we don't ever really die. Like we're still out there. So I think you can still repair relationships. But I get what they're saying. You know, as long as everybody's still alive, it can be worked on as long as parties are willing, and it doesn't even have to be both parties to begin with. You know, major changes can come about just from one person deciding to change a relationship, and that one person changing the way that they're interacting with the other person can have profound effects, especially if you can figure out their primary love language and start speaking that to them. And I've seen this happen, like since we've been studying the book, and I had read the book before, or a different version before, but you know, if just one, and not just with this technique, but with other techniques too, if really just one person in a relationship decides that they want things to change and they start changing, the other person, I mean, they'll respond without even knowing it. You know, like it just changes the dynamics. You know, it takes two people to fight, basically. So when one person is no longer fighting and just kind of surrenders and starts trying to show that other person how much they love them. Because the ironic part of it is, most of the time, the reason why the relationship is rocky is because one or probably both are not feeling loved by the other one. So for whatever reason that is. So if you start speaking their primary love language and they start feeling loved, then they respond in a kinder way, and it just settles the troubled waters. What do you think, Dan?
I think I agree with you on the part, and it's funny that I'm agreeing on this side because I never looked at it this way, but that even if they're past, you can, you know, in a way mend the relationship, because I think what it does is it helps work on changing your heart too, how you perceive them and how you look at them and how you wish, you wish you could do those things if they were here, so that way you would have maybe mended the relationship. So your mindset starts to change, I think. And I think that's part of what this is all about too, is working on your mindset and how you perceive things and how you take things and respond to things. Um, it's just understanding how you need to respond. And so in that, I think it's still a way of how you can mend it, even though they're still not here. Like with my stepdad, who I did not have a real relationship with. I never really, because of the things I lived through as a child. But as I got older, I started to forgive him, and I became, it changed me a little bit, gave me a more open heart to understand and look at their side of some of the things maybe that were going on their side that were totally unrelated to me, but yet I was the result of the actions that came out of it. So I think, it kind of, worked on my heart a little bit and my mindset and how I'm trying to then go from there with other people that I love and care about, and that to make those changes so I can keep them and keep that relationship, but even strengthen it, if I'm making sense.
Absolutely. And I say that it doesn't matter if they're here or not, because, there are relationships where the situation was so volatile. Even if they're still alive, you may never, for your own safety, you may never wish to have contact with that person again. I have a situation like that with an ex. He's still alive, but I would never. I mean, I don't want him to know where I am. I don't want to have any communication with him for my own safety. But that doesn't mean that I can't, in my own mind, just speak to him like on a soul level and work it out that way. I don't have to speak to him in person or on the phone or anything, but I can just speak to him kind of soul to soul, because the forgiveness, has to come from me anyway. Like, if I'm upset about it all, I'm the one that has to cope with it and deal with it anyway. So that's why I think, it's up to us whether we let an experience, ruin us for a minute, ruin us for a day, ruin us for a lifetime. That's our choice. Lots of situations happen and people either become stronger or they become bitter, and that's a choice. And so that's why I say, even if they're not alive, or even if they're a person that you can't communicate with, you can still come to some resolution within yourself, so that it doesn't become something that just haunts you your whole life, and ruins every relationship for the rest of your life. Forgiveness, sometimes we don't understand why people do things, but we will never be able to understand what it's like to live in somebody else's body, to live as somebody else. So we don't know all the things that they're dealing with internally that may have caused them to act outwardly the way they did, in a way that hurt us. And that's what I always try to remember. I say things that hurt people's feelings, and I try not to ever do it intentionally. Oftentimes it's like out there, and then I'm like, oh shit, that probably hurt some so and so's feelings or whatever. And I don't. In other words, I can't cast the first stone because I'm not. I do things, maybe they're not as evil as some other acts that people commit. I don't know, but evil is, it doesn't matter. Like, everybody has a different Like I could deem one thing evil, but somebody else could feel, just something I said was as evil as some other horrible act or whatever, because it's all up to that person and how they're, what's going on with them internally that day and how they're coping with things that day. I mean, it's so subjective. There's just no way to cast stones, I don't think.
And that's funny because I think that, goes back and leads back into a lot of what we talked about in the past, and what, even with this, with family, I think that's sometimes where our reactions, like you were saying earlier, kind of base us on how we react to people in general, comes and stems out of our first basic relationships with our own family. And if we tend to have those first relationships where they're not the best, and you go through some things, you base that and put it on everybody else in the world, and so therefore you kind of treat the rest of the world the whole excuse me, um, same way, instead of looking at everybody with different eyes, so to speak, to see them for who they are, and to try to respond to them in the way that they need to respond, to be responded to and feel loved, so that way you can get responded back to and feel loved. And I know for me that was, you know, I think I've got the biggest heart. I just want to love people, and have people and connect with people, and give me that feeling that I kind of had like with my grandmother, you know, but yet, you know, with my real mom and stepdad, I had this other part that was overlaying, and it kind of, you know, I had this kind of weird battle going on inside of me, trying to understand, with people and doing this and this, and I know inside myself, I always try to um, appease, and I'm using appease with people, so that way they'll like me and want to be around me, and want to include me and things like that. And I think sometimes that drives people crazy and makes them think that I'm trying to force something, when in actuality, no, all I just want is to feel that sense of feeling, kind of like what I had with my grandmother. So in that sense, um, it can really kind of skew, I think, how you perceive and react, and overreact sometimes, I think.
Absolutely, it can. And that's such a common thing for uh, people pleasing activities. I think many, 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 many people do that, especially people with abuse in their background. I know that I do it unconsciously. I've noticed, like, how quiet I am. I live in a house with other people, and they don't even know if I'm here or not, because I'm so quiet and they don't ever see me. And sometimes they'll text me like, "Are you still, are you still here? Are you okay?" And it's kind of funny. And um, but and I would love to say that I'm that quiet just out of you know not wanting to disrupt them or something, and that is a big part of it. But I have to admit that there's another part that I got in so much trouble for if I wasn't quiet. So I know that somehow in my subconscious, that's playing a part. I get that. um, we do tend to, until we start doing this self-development and reading books like this and everything, of course we tend to interact with the world through a broken lens sometimes, if those early relationships were dysfunctional. Now, I'm not saying that if you had a great childhood that everything is perfect in your life either. Like, everybody's got their own issues, but it does, when you have dysfunction early on, it definitely skews the way you look at the world, uh, the way you interact with other people, until you start really actively digging in there and seeing, why am I responding like this? Why does this bother me? Um, Asking yourself the hard questions. Now, with this book, it gives you ways to connect with people, even if you've had dysfunction or you haven't been taught how to love, because many of us were not taught how to love. We're trying to figure it out. And so that's one of the great things about this book. I think it's almost like an instruction manual on, this is how you love someone. You observe them, you listen to them, you see what they appreciate, what they're bitching about, and through paying attention, you can figure out what their love language is. And then once you know that, here are some things that you can do, to show them that you love them. So it's really an instruction manual on how to love, which I think a lot of people need.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like in the book, it talks about this one girl that was adopted, and for up until about 14, she had which most people would say would be a normal relationship. She felt loved, and her parents, her adopted parents did everything. But then at about 14, she started to have this desire to finding out, about her birth mom and stuff and things like that. But her adopted parents were kind of against all that and everything, and so it kind of, you know, put that, you know, a thing between them. And of course, at one point, the big argument came out. Well, she wants to meet the mom or go, visit or whatever, or but she was starting to feel not loved as much by her adopted parents, which in all actuality probably was never further, was farthest from the truth. They probably loved her and everything, but they felt that because of, what they knew about the birth mother, they didn't feel it was in her best interest to go, because she would find out the truth that her mom was, you know, on drugs and had multiple sex partners and all these things and stuff. So in their mind, they felt they had the best and were loving and trying to protect their daughter. But at one point, like I said, they got in an argument, and the her adopted mom said, "Well, fine, if you want to do this or whatever, then go live with her." You know, not really meaning it, but in that heat of the moment. And sometimes, like um, Catherine's pointed out, from something in her childhood, she realized how it had such an impact on her life. Me, with certain things in my childhood, as I've read this book, it's helped me understand, how I react on certain things. And so in that, you know, it things can really have a, way of, you know, impacting decisions that you make too. And so from there, you might make those choices, because I think the bottom customer of this book is everybody's looking for love. They want to find love and feel that sense of being loved, um, and they'll go look for it wherever they find it. Just like you hear a lot of stuff talk about girls and really looking for love and being secure and stuff, and they'll go and look for it from whoever they can get it from. And I think that's kind of an underlying thing for everybody in general, and sometimes even for guys, they'll find a woman and she's not the best woman, but yet because, you know, they're getting something out of it, they put, and girls the same way and stuff, they'll put the wrong emphasis on the wrong areas and not realizing that this is not what it is. And I think that the more we understand and learn about these languages that people have, that we all have, it can help work through those waters into, finding people that truly love us for who we are and what we have to offer, but how we offer and give it back to them to make them feel just as valued.
Yeah, that was an interesting, that's a really common situation with the adoption situation. And I only have one sibling. I've never met him. He was adopted. And there's been, I think, once or twice that I've decided, okay, I'm going to try to figure out how to find him. But then, like, something happens, the application gets lost, or, just something bizarre happens. And I just feel like, no, I'm not supposed to. And I don't know. One of the reasons why I feel that way is because I don't know if he knows that he was adopted. I mean, you never know. Some adoptive parents tell their children that they're adopted and others don't. And so if he doesn't know, he's like a year younger than me, so I'll be 55 this year. So here he is, 54 years old, and suddenly somebody tells him he's adopted. Like, I don't want to screw up somebody's life like that. And there's, some genetic health stuff that I sort of feel the need to reach out about. But then again, I'm like, how would I feel if all of a sudden I found out I was adopted? That would be a mind flip, So another situation that they brought up in the book was this brother that always called his sister, I think it was a brother and sister, always called her Freckles. And, that's another really common situation where somebody has a nickname for somebody that they don't like. And evidently he would always introduce her as Freckles. And that bothered her. And, for some people, it wouldn't bother them, but it bothered her. And I think that's something I struggle with sometimes, is that I think, well, why would that ruin somebody's life because their brother called them Freckles, or introduced them as but it doesn't matter what I think about it. It matters what she thinks about it. That's the whole point here. And it bothered her. And so the author of the book told her, just tell him that it bothers you. And this is another really common situation where we kind of expect people to be psychic, and we expect them to know, that what they're saying is hurting us, or, that we expect them to be able to read our minds and figure us out, and we don't ask for what we want, or, verbalize our discomfort to people, and to give them the opportunity to change it. Sometimes we sit back and moan and groan on the inside over it, and the other person doesn't have a clue in the world that they're doing something that hurts us. And so that's our fault, and I do that a lot. Like, I have resentments, I guess, that I don't verbalize, and they just keep brewing around, and then at some point they just like blow up. And but it's important, to, and the way that the author suggested that she do it was by using the book, by saying, I'm reading this book about how to express love, how to receive love, how to, a book about loving people and learning how to love people in ways that they can accept it. And he told her, just use the book, tell him you're reading the book about this, and you're just curious if he feels loved by you. And so she did. And they were able to repair that situation really quickly. Basically, she just brought out to him that when he called her freckles like that it made her feel unloved. Now, I'll be honest, like there's a part of me that just sometimes says, okay, well, get over it. um, I can be extremely compassionate. I can be very non-compassionate at times. And there's some things that I would find trivial. However, I can sort of in a way relate because people call me all kinds of names. Like my name is Catherine, but they call me Kate, they call me Kay, and they call me Kathy, and they call, and it doesn't bother me. But I guess I can understand where it would. And now my advice to her would be embrace the freckles. Embrace the freckles. But I get it. And so we have to respect what bothers other people and try to change that if we can, if that relationship is important to us. And if it's not important to us, then we don't change. But if we don't know that what we're doing is upsetting someone, we can't change it. So that's the point, is that you have to verbalize it.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if because I don't think he went deeper than what he suggested and working on in that how the being called. But I'm wondering if she had an issue with the freckles of her own, so that way when he said that, it just magnified that to her maybe, and maybe it just and things like that. I think sometimes as siblings, I'm doing my own from my own experience. I think at times, even though when we do it, we're doing it out of fun or loving or as part of how we think, but sometimes we don't understand, you know, that, it really is something that bothers them or something like that because of the fact that you look at them and say, oh, they're family. I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't let this bother me. I shouldn't let, this be an issue. And like in her case, she kind of just let it go on and on and on, even though it did really bother her. And I think, from my personal experience, I think I've done that in my case, like with, certain aspects of things in my family. I just like their family. I love them. I don't want to blow it up and make it a big issue and, make it more than what it is. But, you know, who's really winning in that aspect? Nobody's really winning because they don't really know and they don't understand, and you don't have the chance to work on the relationship and maybe go to a deeper and better relationship because you're off here thinking this way and they have no clue. And um, I think, that's something even I need to look at for myself in certain aspects of how I look at things and how I wish some things would change. But I got to be the catalyst for that.
Yeah, we have to learn how to communicate. A lot of times we just, especially people with abusive backgrounds, that's one of those things that, you tend to not verbalize things. You just hold stuff in and kind of suffer in silence. But I agree with you. I think that's why I said embrace the freckles. I mean, I think if being called freckles is that upsetting to you, that's something about yourself that you're uncomfortable with that you need to work on, and embrace that aspect of yourself and love that aspect of yourself. There's this wonderful song, and I can't remember the name of it right now. I'll have to pay attention next time it comes on. And it's I can't even remember who sings it. It's a woman who sings it, and she's talking to young girls, and she's basically saying, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the makeup just this way, and you don't have to judge yourself about everything, and you don't have to change everything about yourself to appease somebody else. And being an Uber driver, in a college town, I see this, I witness this every day, where these young girls, the way that they dress, the way that they, um, that these frats, these fraternities are like so out of control. Like the other day, it's like one of the assignments that they give to their I don't even what they call them. They're, they put them through these challenges and things, to be part of a fraternity or whatever. And like part of these challenges are going and vetting someone from another fraternity. Like, this fraternity has to screw this fraternity tonight. And it's just ridiculous behaviors. And maybe I'm an old fuddy-duddy, I don't know, but there are diseases out there, and there are serious consequences to having sexual relations that aren't, I'm just kind of thinking in my mind, how many of these girls are going to be pregnant in a month or two because of these stupid challenges that the fraternities are doing? And it breaks my heart that they don't have the balls basically to stand up and say, no, I'm not doing that. Who the hell do you think you are for even telling me I have to do something like that? Like, this is ridiculous behaviors that they're encouraging. Meanwhile, the GPAs are in the twos. For these fraternities, it's not a wonder, because it has nothing to do with college. It's just, I don't know. And then there's parents forcing their children into these fraternities because they feel like they're not going to have a future somehow if they're not in these fraternities. And I'm thinking, if you only knew what was going on in these fraternities, you'd do everything you could to keep your child out of them. Like, it's just insane. And I feel so bad. Young women, and I can only speak for women because I'm not a guy. I know that guys, have all of the same insecurities and things, I'm sure, but what I see is these young girls just really, and we may get hate mail over this one, guys. If anybody watches this show, and that's all right, I'm cool with it. But I'm just saying, somebody who has experienced sexual trauma in the past, it doesn't, like a lot of girls say, I should be able to wear anything I want to wear and nobody has a right to touch me. And I agree on one aspect. On another aspect, there's a part of me that says, if you're showing everything, guys get out of control. And the town that I live in is sort of a melting pot for cultures. And we have a lot of young men here from other cultures who have never seen a woman's flesh, because in their culture, in their society, women are always covered. They're never unaccompanied without a man with them. And I'm not saying that that's right either. What I'm just trying to point out is, you don't know who it is you're showing all that skin to. Maybe they've never seen it and they just get like overwhelmed. And I'm not saying that that's a go ahead that they can do whatever they want and traumatize somebody, but I can understand different sides of it, and I think there's a certain amount of responsibility that people need to take for themselves on how they present themselves so that they don't put themselves in dangerous situations.
Well, I think that part of that needs to come from the way I'm going to say this, from within the family aspect, because a lot of times then how do I say this? Kids are not uh, helped to understand that what they put out there, what they perceive or whatever, because in some families, the parents are just the same way, the mothers might be, and instead of learning to respect themselves and have enough value in themselves, that, they deserve more and better, and, and goes back again. I think it goes back again to, you know, if you don't feel loved within the within the family familiar aspect first, again, I think it's a basic thing. We all look for love somewhere. So I think, in that sense, it comes back from some of that. Not saying there isn't added outside pressures from um, social media, people in general, what people think is glamorous and what um, people out in the entertainment field or in certain areas and portray, and people try to take on and emulate that themselves because that's what they feel is in order to be liked or this or that. So you have maybe not the greatest home or you don't feel so loved at home, and you see all these people out here with what I call is um how can I put it? I don't want to say like it's like a jealous love. We see them with this and they're pretty and all that this and that and everybody adoring them, but they don't understand the backside of what their lives might be. You know, they may have all their own stuff because you hear a lot of people, doing drugs or dying or killing themselves or whatever, and their lives are just as effed up as everybody else's is, maybe even more so in some ways. So I think it goes back to we need to start really teaching ourselves how to love and love ourselves first. And I think you've alluded to that a lot of times, Catherine, that you know if you can get a good basis there, then like books like this and learning to work on yourself and constantly try to improve yourself, you know that helps give you hopefully open eyes enough to where you can look at yourself and say, no, I am valuable, I am loved, I am worth it, I deserve better, I deserve to be, you know um, for women treated like a queen by the men that are in her life, and for guys, finding women that will look at them and treat them like the king, that type of, you know not saying that they'll do everything perfect, not saying that you know there isn't always, things are always going to, but I still think it comes down to a lot of how we look and value ourselves, um, before anything out here can go, that we can work on getting things out here to where we want it to be. And this book is a great place to start, is learning to look at ourselves, understand our primary love language, and then learn how to understand other people's primary, so then that way everybody gets to what they're looking for.
Oh, it absolutely comes down to self-worth.
And what everybody needs. Sorry, I meant to throw that out too.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you're young and impressionable, and I have nothing against social media. I think social media is an amazing tool. I mean, I wouldn't be here personally without the internet, because that's where I found my surgeon that got me out of the wheelchair and all that stuff. I mean, it's a great thing, but it can also just drive very unhealthy behaviors. Like you said, they see all the glam and they don't they don't stop to think about. I mean, just look at all of the musicians and stuff that die early from drug overdoses and suicide and all of that, because their life is not as glamorous as it appears on the outside. Like you said, they're still effed up and probably more than anybody else. And a lot of artists are that way. They're channeling their pain into their whatever their art is, whether it's paintings or music or whatever, you know. A lot of that comes from pain in their lives. And it's a shame. That's another thing that I see these young girls getting on social media doing all kinds of crazy things that they're really going to regret one day. And then once it's out there on the internet, you can't take it back, you know. And unfortunately, you know, we all, like, I did a lot of stupid things, but thank God they're not out there on the internet necessarily, you know. Now it seems like everything that everybody does, they're recording it and putting it on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, you know. And um, it's it's scary to me. It really is. Not only because of, you know, their parents can now see it, and everybody, you know, people, their new job perspective, job bosses can see it, and at one point, it's something. It's kind of like tattoos. I mean, I've never regretted getting the tattoos that I have, but some people say, "Oh, don't get a tattoo because then you'll regret it later down the road. There's nothing you can do about it." Well, that's kind of like the internet now. You know, if you put something out there, it's out there. It's not coming back. So, and even if you take it down, somebody's already got it downloaded, and so you kind of have to, I think, have to be careful. Um, and a lot of that's going to come back and bite people in the ass, unfortunately. But I've had a little bit of that just because I've been through, you know, as an entrepreneur, I've tried a lot of, well, not a lot, but several multi-level marketing businesses that didn't necessarily work out, or, you know, things like that, where now I wish I could just go back and take all the videos I did about that down, you know, and I can kind of shut off access to them or whatnot, but they're still out there. That's the thing, you know, they're still out there. People still saw them and all of that. And so you have to be careful, you know, but the self-worth, this is the thing. A lot of us had dysfunctional families, a lot of us. And even some of, you know, what we might consider like the perfect families, sometimes they're dysfunctional in their own way, you know, because I know families that everybody gets along, everybody, you know, like there's no quote serious dysfunction, that, you know, abuse or, you know, any of that kind of stuff, that you, alcoholism or drug addicts or nothing like that major, but they're all like robots. Like it's such a controlled environment. Like it's not a healthy environment either, you know. So in a way, everybody is sort of from a dysfunctional space in different ways. And one of the most powerful things I ever learned, and I can't remember which book it was from or who said it, somebody said it, is that, you know, you need to be the parent or the lover or the friend that you always needed to yourself. You need to be that for yourself. In other words, if you had fucked up parents, you need to be, you need to, you know, whether you need to visualize it, imagine it in your mind, however you want to call it, you need to like be that child, and then also be that parent that takes that child on the lap and says, literally says all the things that you always needed to hear to feel whole. You need to do that for yourself, because if you're waiting around for that dysfunctional parent to do it, it's never going to happen. And if it's going to mess you up for the rest of your life, then that's the choice that you're making, to be messed up for the rest of your life. Like, you can repair it. You can be that for yourself. You can be that lover that you never had. You know, people complain about being lonely and not having a lover, but do they really love themselves? I mean, do they really do the things for themselves that a lover would do? Because if they're not, that's their choice. Again, that's your happiness is up to you. You can't put your happiness off on somebody else, or you can't put your happiness off on, well, when I find the perfect whoever, I'm going to be happy. It doesn't work like that. You got to be happy now, and you got to do whatever it takes to do that. And if that means going back and cussing out a parent, and I'm talking about in your mind, not necessarily, in person, but if you had a parent that was abusive and you're angry and you need to verbalize all that, then do it. Imagine in your mind seeing yourself sitting there in front of that person and say everything you need to say, and since you're imagining it, just imagining that they actually accept it, because that might not happen in real life. They might just tell you you're full of shit and smack you again or something, so. But since we're imagining all this, let's just imagine a peaceful reconciliation, and that they understand and hear you, and then they give you back what you need. These are all things that, it sounds silly, but I guarantee you I've done some of these, and if you'll just do it, it can shift. If you're not a good visualizer, some people can't visualize, then write a letter to that person, and cuss them out and say everything you want to say and tell them how much they hurt you. And sometimes just getting it out, just whether it's in writing, whether it's in an imagined session, or if you need a real person, ask a friend to sit there and be your father or whoever, so that you can say these things and just get it out. And once it's out, and especially when it's on paper and you can reread it, it's amazing how you can go back and look, and 3/4 of it is like total bullshit. You go, oh, well, that's just bullshit. You can even call yourself out on it because you realize that it's petty, or you can understand. Like my son's father, his mother was very abusive. And the reason she was very abusive is because she was very abused. So for him, he couldn't get past her abuse. For me, I could see why she was the way she was, because she wasn't right in the head because of all the stuff that she went through. Like there was no way for her to be, quote, normal. There was no way for her to be, quote, the loving mother with what she had experienced. And so for me, it was easy to forgive her because my heart went out to her situation. And the abuse that she went through was far worse than what she put him through. Now, he didn't feel that way because he was the one sitting in it, but as the outsider, so sometimes you have to take that outsider position. If you can, take a step back from the situation, pretend you're somebody else for a minute and try to look at it through a different set of eyes. And sometimes you can find forgiveness, when you realize what they went through that's causing them to act out, because, we're all born innocent babies, and we just want to be loved, and then all this shit happens, and we're not equipped to cope until we get older and we start reading all these books, and some people never read a book. There's a lot of people in their life that never read a book after they get out of school. I forget what the statistics are, but they were shocking when I read them. I remember I was completely shocked at how many people never read a book after they get out of school. And self-development is just a foreign concept to many people. And so there's a lot of hurt people walking around out there. And hurt people hurt other people. That's just the way it happens. And it's not always intentional. but it's just a sad fact of life. But when we can realize why they're acting the way they're acting, for me, that opens the door to forgiveness.
Well, yeah, I think all those points are great. And I think we, all need to look inward, to start going outwards, but also like in the book, going back to the book, he talked about brothers, and this chapter is talking about family and situations and stuff. Sometimes, like me with my brother, I would love to develop a better and deeper relationship with him as my brother, but I don't see him very often. Excuse me, unless it's like a family function or something like that. His schedule's kind of busy. My schedule's kind of busy, and excuse me, I don't know where these burps are coming from, but wow, sorry about that. And I like to work on doing that, but I don't even know really what his, and he's my brother, and I don't know what his primary love language is, and I think that's something I need to try and first discover, so that I know how to start working on trying to work on, because we're both getting older. We're both in our 50s. Our mom is getting into, she'll be 75 now. So in that sense, you know, we're going to have some major changes coming on in our life, God willing, that we're both still alive, that neither one of us has any, and they're going to affect us in decisions that are going to have to be made, that, in relation to our mom, that he and I are probably going to be forced to make. And, I don't know how to start working on that, so that way we develop our relationship, so that way we can make the best decisions and not have it be petty or how we feel or this or that, and because, you know, there are times where, I love being around my family and doing things with my family, but even within my own family, I still don't know what makes a lot of them tick. And it makes it hard, because I'll go over there a lot of times wanting to just be over there and be with them. And then I come home and I'm drained and frustrated and like, well, wow, I wonder if I should have been gone in the first place, because I am just so come home feeling very negative, when I wanted to go over there and come back with a positive feeling, because overall I like being with my family. I want to be with them. I want to spend time with them. I want to, um, have that, and sometimes I just come home and I'm going, so in that sense, I think if I can utilize some of the steps out of this book and start placing them there, it will help with that. And it might help in that functionality within my own family, to kind of, like you said, get to a lot of this, clearing out a lot of the junk that we create or feel that's there from even when we were younger, and kids and growing up and all the things that come out, because like I don't believe there is such thing as the perfect family, but you can work towards the best version of your family that can be, hopefully, if all sides are working towards the same thing. And sometimes I don't think everybody's on the same page, and I think that's the other part that kind of gets in the way. And until one person starts taking the right steps, it will probably be that way. And I think that's why so many families repeat the cycle of, for generations, because everybody says, oh, well, that's the way my parents were, that's the way my family is, or that's the way we are, we're just that way. Well, like you've alluded to, Catherine, if we want to make that change, we got to change that selves first in us, and then go forward. And hopefully from us making that change and doing that, then it has that snowball effect of rubbing off on, you know, for me in this case, other members of my family, and can work towards where, the next generations see that we did that, and then they follow that step, and so therefore, and then it spreads outward to good close friends, to people that we deal with and interact with, and things like that. So I think, like, this book is really helpful and really helping me in seeing and understand some of those things of how to even take the steps to take that first step. And I think that's where everybody gets tripped up, is they don't know how to take that first step.
Yeah, that I agree with you. People don't know where to start. You have to start with yourself. There's no doubt. You just have to start with yourself. Because if you start out thinking you're going to change somebody else, it's not going to happen. Like, you can change yourself. You can change the way that you take things, and but to just start out trying to change somebody else never works. And yeah, that's a great story in the book. There's the story about the two brothers, and the guy admitted he just felt so much distance between he and his brother. And so the author encouraged him to figure out what his brother's primary love language was, which it turned out to be acts of service. And then the guy was kind of like, well, gosh, how am I going to, do acts of service? We live far away from each other, and we're both very busy, and blah, blah, blah. But then he, I don't know, somehow he figured out, like, his brother had to have an operation, and he wound up helping him out after that, and he cut his grass a couple of times when he was on vacation, something, just different things like that. And then the guy said, wow, I've spent more time with my brother this year than I have ever before. And so, yeah, I guess your first step, Dan, is to figure out what your brother's primary love language is, and then figure out how you can, hopefully it's something easy like gifts. But quality time, that's a tough one these days because everybody's so busy. Sandy was talking about that last week. She has a friend, that came to visit or something, and hers was quality time, and she just was, you could see she just felt like ripping her hair out because she has no time. We just feel like we have no time these days. And so to set aside quality time, but we also brought up the point that quality time isn't necessarily quantity time. Sometimes just a few moments of really being present with someone can make a hell of a difference in their life. And it doesn't always, sometimes we build it up in our head, that they have to have, a whole day of our undivided attention or whatnot. And maybe some people do, but other people might just be happy with, sitting down and watching a show together for 30 minutes, or, having lunch with cell phones off or something like that. Sometimes we blow it out of proportions and find excuses on why we can't give this person what they need because it's going to take so much away from us. And really, if we'd spend the time just doing something for the person that we spent thinking about it for days on why we can't do it for them, it would be over and done with, and everybody'd be happy and back on their own time schedule. So a lot of it is, our suffering is self-induced. It really is. And that's been shown over and over by many people, that maybe they've been in jail, but they use that time to reinvent themselves, instead of harboring, and I'm talking about people who have been jailed, not okay, Bill, thank you so much. Glad you could be here with us today. When we think of people who've been put in jail that weren't supposed to be there, You know, did you want to? Oh, and but instead of being bitter, like they know that they're innocent. Nobody believes them when they say they are because everybody says that they're innocent, right? But they actually know that they're innocent and they're in there unnecessarily. But instead of getting bitter, they use it as a way to inspire other people. You know, we've seen that happen many times with famous people. And so it's still up to us. We can choose whether we're going to let something bother us. The thing that I hate is when people are miserable for their whole lives over something that somebody doesn't even know that they did to them, you know? Because that happens all the time. People hold resentments and grudges against somebody, and that person doesn't even know that they did it at all, or, you know, doesn't remember saying what they said, and yet it ruins another person's life. And so I think we have to take responsibility for our own happiness. And if we're feeling unhappy about something, we have to figure out why, and we have to take actions to remedy that. Well, we don't have to. We can just be miserable for all our lives. But I mean, I think the healthier choice is to figure it out and find another way to look at it so that it's not detrimental to your happiness and well-being. All right, last words here, Dan.
Well, I was gonna just throw out a couple of the things that it talks about at the end of the chapter, things to think about, and it gave some, I think, good practical ideas. Is list the names of your family members, mother, father, sibling, using a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 representing not loved, 5 somewhat, and 10 greatly. How loved do you feel by each of your family members? And then it goes into why did you rate each one as number 2? What do you think is each family member's primary love language? Um, now, to me, that might be the first step, is going, okay, what do I think in the first place? And then actually work on discovering from there. For how effective do you think you have been in speaking their primary love language? And then sixth, let me get there. Oh, it just goes to 5, and then you give a scale on how effective you are, I think, on speaking it, and then use the list below to map out a strategy for um, you know expressing your love to those family members by using their love language, and going from there. And it gives you a little thing in there of what to say and how to take those responses and stuff. So that's my bit. That's something I need to look at and kind of go more in depth on. So that, you know, I'm trying to emphasize that he, just by, instead of just talking about it, he gives you some good concrete steps to use and follow and implement to help you in the process too.
Yep, it's like an instruction manual on how to love people. It's a good read, and we're going to call it for today, but we'll see you next Saturday. You can always check us out on our Facebook group, Mindset Mastery Collective. And we also have a YouTube channel, which is probably where you're viewing this. And feel free to jump on with us. Join our Facebook group. And I mean, we can have 50 people on here, no problem. And I made a comment in our chat that we have with each other that just Dan and I are boring. We need to get some more people on here. So come join us and tell us what you think, or if you just think we're crazy, we're cool with that. So everybody have an awesome week. Figure out who somebody's love language is. Maybe you don't even know your own yet. So it's a first step. Go ahead and take it. We love you guys. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.